Hi guys, I'm Kate and welcome back to my channel. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you've probably noticed that I've never talked about foster care before, and this video is going to be my first time doing that. So I have some notes wrote down just in case I start rambling and forget what I'm supposed to be doing, so I have a notebook here. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about our journey with foster care so far and the reason why we are taking a break from foster care right now. This video is going to be primarily about our first foster care placement, and maybe I can do another video in the future if anyone has any questions about the licensing process or anything like that. But this video I really just want to talk about my experience with our first foster care placement. The reason that we decided to take a break from foster care is because I got pregnant with my daughter, and she is now 6 months old, and we're starting to think about jumping back into it, but we're probably going to wait just a little bit longer because she's still little and it's tough when you have kids close together, as a lot of you know. But we're excited to start fostering again in the future after our daughter is just a little bit older. So we're going to see when the timing's right when that time comes, but right now we're still taking a break for a little while longer. The reason I decided to make this video is just because when we started doing foster care, I was looking on YouTube for every video that I could find of accepting your first foster care placement, getting your first call for a placement, the licensing process when we were going through that, how that worked, how long it took, everyone else's experience with it. And I really didn't find that many different families that made foster care videos, but the ones that I did find, I binge watched all of their videos so I could learn every single thing I could about foster care. So I decided to make this video just in case anyone else is out there in my situation and they're looking for some different people's experiences. Maybe I can be one of those experiences and share the process that we went through with our first foster care placement. So let me get started in my notes here. I guess the best place to start is just talking a little bit about when we got licensed, how long it took. So it took us 5 months to get licensed. We started right after the 4th of July, and we got our license in December. December 6th is the exact date that we got our license, so it took just about 5 months to get licensed because we were very on top of things. We waited 6 weeks for our first placement. We got one call before that for a little 2-year-old boy, and we did say yes that we would take him, but he ended up going to a different family. So in total we waited 6 weeks to get the call for our placement that we did take, and she was a newborn from the NICU, and that had been what I had wanted at the time, was to get a newborn, to get placed with a newborn. And I knew that it might take a while, so we did wait 6 weeks. We were licensed 0 to 2, but my licensing worker knew that I really wanted a newborn, so she was kind of holding off on the toddlers just because she knew my heart was really with taking a newborn at the time. Okay, so we got the call for the placement that we took, and I remember clearly that I was at work when we got the call, and I answered my phone right away because, you know, if you're doing foster care and a random number comes up on your screen or your licensing worker's number, you know that your heart starts racing and you answer every single phone call thinking that it's a phone call for a placement. So I answered the call, and I was at work, and they said they had a newborn and they didn't know yet if I was going to get her or not, but they wondered if we were willing to take her. And they explained a lot of things to me just because the situation was a little bit more challenging. She was in the NICU. She was 6 weeks old, so she had already been in the NICU for 6 weeks, which meant that she did have some medical conditions. I can't talk too much about that. And she was going into foster care straight from the hospital. So, and they hadn't been able to find anyone in her county, so we were taking a borrowed beds placement. So if you don't know anything about that, it's just It's just when you accept a placement from another county nearby. So the only thing that was really a bummer about that is that we had to drive close to an hour. It might have been like 45 minutes to an hour, I can't remember exactly, to take her to visits. And since she was a newborn, she had 3 visits a week. Each of them were an hour long, and they do that with newborns to form an attachment with their parents, so they're seeing them more consistently. So that's understandable, but it's a little bit more inconvenient if you have a busier schedule. Luckily, I was planning to stay at home once I had kids, so if I accepted a foster care placement or had my own children, I was deciding that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, so I had more time on my hands. But the reason why it became more challenging is because the day before we accepted this placement, we found out that we were expecting. And a lot of people probably think that I'm crazy for taking a placement the day after we found out we were expecting, but my heart just felt like it was the right decision to make. We had been waiting for this call, and we had been trying to start our family, and I didn't know which one was going to come first. And then all of a sudden, one day we find out we're pregnant, and the next morning we get a call asking if we'll accept a newborn placement. We had to give her medication twice a day, in the morning and at night. And at first, when we were on the phone, the licensing worker told us that she thought a nurse was going to have to come administer the medication through an IV. So that ended up not being true. It ended up just being oral medication. But you'll find a lot of times that you'll hear things through the phone call for the placement that actually aren't true. So yeah, that's just kind of how it works with foster care. You don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So we got the call, and then I called my husband. I asked him. He initially did not think that we should. He wasn't sure. He said it was kind of up to me because I didn't realize how sick I was going to start feeling, which ended up being the reason that we had to end the placement. And because I was not feeling well, and just with the distance, it just wasn't working out. Okay, ultimately we ended up saying yes, and we ended up taking her. And then she called me back, I think it was like an hour later, and said, okay, you're going to get her, and she's being released from the hospital in, it was like 2 hours, I think, and the hospital was like an hour away. So I called my husband, and he was just about to get home from work. I had climbed up to the attic, got down the car seat, and I started getting a diaper bag put together of everything that I thought we might need, different sizes of clothes and diapers, because I didn't know how big she was going to be. One thing that I was really happy that I had done beforehand was really prepare and get clothes in all different sizes, so we had at least a couple pieces of clothing, no matter how old the baby was that we got to bring home. And I only got them from preemie actually up until 9 months, because I had a feeling that our first placement was going to be a baby, and if not, then I would have had to run out and get something. But I was glad that I had those things. I already had bottles on hand. I had a lot of things, and maybe I can make a separate video on everything that I had before we got a placement, just so that I was prepared, because I watched a lot of those videos too about preparing for a placement, preparing their nursery, what to pack in your visitation bag. All of those videos really helped me so much, because I mean, you learn in training, but watching these videos actually shows real life experiences. So that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to make this video. And we just got in the car as soon as he got home from work, and we left for the hospital, and that was just, it was so exciting. We got to the hospital, and it was actually, I was a little nervous because we had to like scrub in to go into the NICU. They had to teach us how to feed her. She had to eat on her side. And make sure you ask as many questions as you can when you're in the hospital, because that's when you'll find out a lot of information from the nurses, different things that you might not find out from the licensing worker, because they might not know certain things that the NICU nurses know, or just nurses in the hospital in general, because they haven't been at the hospital for days with the baby, or weeks, as in our situation she had been there for 6 weeks. So we did ask questions, and we did find some things out, but it was just crazy that you get to take this baby home, and I have a video of us driving her home from the hospital, and I'm sitting in the back seat with her, and it just felt surreal, especially since it was our first time. It was our first time being parents because we hadn't had any of our own children. So just taking her home from the hospital, it was such a cool experience, and just bringing her into our house, knowing that like we were the ones taking care of her. It was crazy. But when we were at the hospital, she must have known that she was on her best behavior, because she was just a little angel at the hospital. But when we got home, it was a totally different story, and she just screamed and screamed. And this was the type of screaming that you could not console. You could not really do much to calm her down, because she was irritable from her medication, and I think she didn't feel good most of the time, which, I mean, you can imagine in her condition. So it was harder than taking care of an average newborn. I mean, everyone knows that newborns cry, but it was pretty tough, I'm not gonna lie. So we were broken quickly by that, and it was very stressful. We couldn't really take her anywhere because she could not be overstimulated. They told us to really keep her at home most of the time until she got adjusted and kind of weaned off of her medication. And so I took her out to work once, and that was a mistake. I took her in just to meet my coworkers and thank them for all the gifts that they had given us and the clothing and everything that they gave us for her. But after that, I did not take her anywhere else except to my mom's a couple times, and to the doctors and her WIC appointment and that kind of thing that we really had to take her to. But man, when she got out of her element, she was not happy, and she would cry. You could not console her, like I was saying. So it was very stressful to take her anywhere. And this was our first placement, so I mean, your first placement is stressful enough, but then when you add in a newborn that is kind of unconsolable, it just makes it even harder. But it was not as hard for us as it was for her. I know she was going through a pretty painful experience. I mean, weaning off of her medication and what was in her system when she was born, that's really hard to take in for me. I was very emotional over that, just to see what she was going through. She never really made eye contact and smiled or anything like that when we had her. She's doing really great now, but when we had her, she was still on a higher dose of medication, and she wasn't doing the best. So then we had to make a really hard decision, which was to ultimately end the placement, to have them start looking for another family for her, just because I was pregnant and I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't realize that I was going to be feeling that sick before we accepted the placement. So I felt really guilty about that, because I felt like we made the commitment to take her in and care for her, and then now we were going to have to just uproot her and move her to a new family. But that was what was best for our family at the time, and it just seemed like after meeting her family, seeing their situation, I knew that it was going to be more of a long-term situation. It wasn't going to be just a few months or even a year. I knew it was going to be long-term, and she is still in care. So it's already been like a year and a few months, and she's still in care. So I had a feeling that's what was going to happen, and now she's actually in a placement with her older brother. So either way, we wouldn't have had her long-term, because they wanted her. After she was just a little bit older, they decided that they wanted her. So I mean, they would get the first option to take her because they had her sibling. So I think it's great that they were able to stay together. That's really great. I think it's great for both of them, because her brother just loves her so much, and at the visits that we went to, you could just see how much he loved her, and it was just really cute. So one more thing that I wanted to talk about is that how the visits went. I loved connecting with the parents. That was probably my favorite part, was taking her to those visits and getting to just talk to the parents a little bit, even though we might not agree with the situation that the parents are in, or that they're not doing enough, or whatever the case may be. But it was just great to be able to connect with them. I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed giving them pictures, and they would always thank me for taking care of her, and you could tell that they really loved her. They just, I mean, the situation that they were in, they were not able to properly care for her at the time. I can't really say much more than that, but it just wasn't a good situation, and it was really sad. But those moments that I did get to connect with them, I really enjoyed, and I think that we started forming a relationship, and it was kind of sad that only a month later, I mean, she had to move to another home. We had to make that decision, but ultimately I think that it was best for our family, and she ended up getting to move with her brother, so I think it ended up being really great for her as well. It was really sad after she left, and the day that she did get moved, we had a scare with my pregnancy. We had to go to the hospital and get an ultrasound, and also we had our friend's wedding that my husband and I were both in that same weekend the next day, so it was a very exciting and sad time all at the same time. I'm very excited to start back up on foster care again. Can't wait to open our home back up, and our license isn't closed right now, but our licensing worker knows that we're taking a break, so I'm very excited to let her know that we're ready to start again when that time comes. I'm very glad that we did get that experience. We'll never forget her being in our home and how that felt. I got to watch my husband be a dad for the first time, and he got to watch me be a mom and care for this baby for the first time. Even though we only had her for a few short weeks, or a month, I think it was a life-changing experience, and we knew then that we would want to do this again, and we're very excited when that time comes. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I hope this helped give a little insight on what it's like taking a newborn home from the hospital in foster care. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. This is my first foster care video, but I make lifestyle videos and motherhood videos. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so that's kind of the content that I have on my channel. Thank you so much.